Welcome to the next part of the course. In this section, I'll talk about the Linux console. We've said earlier that the console is not an indispensable component, and it truly isn't. However, in many cases, it's more convenient to use the console than the graphical interface. For more advanced operations, which will be discussed in the later parts, such as software installation or troubleshooting, the console proves useful, and it's good to have a general idea about its basics, such as operations it can perform, and commands it recognizes. Later in the course, we'll discuss the console and its capabilities in greater detail. Right now, we'll only mention some basic information required for daily work. It's wrong to see the console as something highly complicated. In reality, this is not the case. Maybe it is a certain myth that you can't use Linux when you don't know how to use the terminal, and the terminal is very complicated. But again, it's not so difficult to use. The console is quite useful. You needn't be afraid of it. In your daily work with the system, you don't have to use it very often unless you'd like to. Personally, I think that the console allows you to do some things faster and more conveniently. However, it's a matter of years of experience. A novice user will feel much more comfortable within the desktop environment, and they won't need the console very often. Administrative tasks in particular are much easier to perform from the console level. Most of the various graphical applications, tools for software installation, system management, or system configuration are in reality just graphical versions of the commands that can be run manually from the command line. The console allows you to automate certain administrative tasks because it can run scripts. A script is a series of instructions or commands in the form of a single file, or roughly speaking, a program. When you use the console, it's also easier to find errors. Typically, graphical applications, as is the case with Windows, give the user very little information about errors. In general, they'd only inform you if something's gone wrong. When you use a console, the error is usually described in detail. You can get a lot of information that directly indicates what needs to be done to eliminate the error. The console is an essential tool if you want to make some aspects of your work automatic. For example, from the console level, you can make certain commands run automatically at certain hours and at regular intervals so that the user doesn't need to remember about it. Of course, in graphical interfaces, this is not really possible because a window application must wait for certain actions on the part of the user. You have to click something or activate some buttons. Commands executed in the command line won't require such actions. Let's start with bash. This is one of the most basic terms. Bash is simply a Linux shell. There are many system shells. Bash is one of them, and it's currently the most popular one. Some say that it's not the best shell, but it's easy to use. It's well known and compatible with virtually all other Linux shells. And that's why it's become the default shell for almost all of the current Linux distributions, be it commercial, non-commercial, or server ones. Virtually every Linux system uses bash as the default shell. Interestingly, bash is based on the Bourne shell, also known as the SH shell, which was created in the 1970s. And bash itself was designed in 1987, which means that it even predates Linux. At that time, this shell was used in Unix systems, and that's why it's become so popular. It's very well known in the community, and that's probably why it's so firmly established in the Linux environment as well. Apart from being a shell, that is, a terminal which allows user to execute certain commands, bash is also a very good scripting language. This means that you can use it to perform a series of tasks, either using bash internal commands or by calling a script. That is, a series of instructions saved in a simple text file. Scripts allow you to manage your system efficiently. They give you control over virtually all its operations, and they're an indispensable tool for every Linux system administrator. Let's now discuss scripts in more detail. This issue will come up many times in the later parts of this course, so it's important to understand it well. A script is nothing but plain text file in which each line may contain all sorts of commands that shell is supposed to execute while reading the script. When you run a script, the commands are executed sequentially. The system executes one command, waits until the task is done, and only then starts executing the next one. These commands can either be internal shell commands, that is, some tasks already predefined in bash, or they may call other programs and external scripts. A script can call another script, which in turn can do the same, or open some other program. A script can call another script, which in turn can do the same, or open some other program. This is what scripts are usually used for. In fact, the reason we write scripts is to bundle a number of operations so that they can read the same input and write to the same output. Internal shell commands usually execute operations such as loops and the like. We'll discuss this more in detail later on, while talking about the ways to automate your work. To sum up, the function of the shell is to translate commands written in the script, whether they're internal bash commands or external commands, into instructions that can be understood by the operating system. Thus, for example, the command mv is understood by the system as a request to move a file to another location. Scripts can be compared to bat files from earlier versions of Windows. In Windows 95 and 98, bat files were still widely used because both of these systems were actually graphical shells of the DOS system. Nowadays, these files are used by various installation programs. In reality, bat files and Linux scripts work in exactly the same way. They're driven by the same logic. These are simple text files with a sequence of commands.